Hello, welcome. This video is all about chainsaw care, and so what I'll be going through is the way I clean and maintain the chainsaw after usage. Okay, so the first thing I'd do after I've used the chainsaw before I started to clean it is have a good visual check round it. Does everything look present and correct, or is there anything there that looks broken? And see if there's any cracks or dents or any pipes hanging out or anything, etc. And I do this with all of the machine, not just underneath, and it gives me an idea of the kind of scale of cleaning I'll need to be doing in a minute. And I always have a quick glance to make sure the anti-vibration rubbers are okay when I do this. And now we've had a quick look round, we can see just how dirty it is and what we've got to deal with. I first take a look behind the chain side cover by removing the side cover bolts. This allows me access to the centrifugal clutch and the drive sprocket, and what I want to do now is remove the chain and the bar. And having a quick visual behind here, it doesn't seem like anything's broken or missing, and it's the same in the back of the cover. But we can see what we need to clean here. We've got a mixture of wood shavings, dirt and oil. And one of the best ways I've found to clean this off is to simply use an air line with some compressed air. And from my past experience, it is okay to blow it straight off like this, but I do like to soak it first. And I personally use either a light oil or carburetor spray. And I'll show how good they are by comparing the two. First of all, I'll spray the light oil on one side here, and then I'll spray some carburetor spray on the other side. And I now like to leave that to soak while I tend to the other parts. So I do exactly the same to the back of the chain cover and leave that to soak. And whilst it's doing so, I remove the air filter cover and the air filter and take a look inside. And one of the first things I do is look at the back of the carburetor where the choke butterfly or the choke plate is. I then activate the choke, closing it so no debris can go down into the back of the carburetor. I then make sure it's in the off position, just for a bit of extra safety, even though the chances of it starting are very slim. And then I'll look around the carburetor and see if all is well. Are all the pipes and linkages and wires in the right place? And then, as before, being careful not to get any spray in the back of the carburetor, I spray around the carburetor and let it soak. And just to put the mind at ease, I haven't found this to degrade any rubber or plastic in the time we're soaking this. We'll be blowing it all off shortly. So I'll leave all of that soaking while I tend to the recoil. There is some obvious damage to this recoil which does need fixing, but it won't be on this particular video. But I need to remove this recoil to check and clean behind it by removing these 4 bolts, which of course will be different for all different brands of chainsaw. And once this is removed, I'll put it to one side and take a look at the flywheel. Initially, all looks well. The cooling fins and the starter pawls on the flywheel appear present and correct. And the next thing, is there any cracks or damage in this outer plastic part? This looks fine. This directs the airflow from the fins of the turning flywheel over the engine, because this of course is an air-cooled engine and this is the cooling system for it. And so if there's any damage in the way the flywheel generates the air, or that the outer cover is some way damaged, not allowing that flow to go over the engine correctly, then there could be engine seizures due to overheating. So this should just lift off, and I can't see any evidence of damage on this one. And once this is removed, we can see a lot clearer behind there. I have a quick visual check of the rubbers to see if they're okay, and then I check the darker areas with a flashlight to see if everything looks present and correct. All seems okay here. The starter pawls are nice and loose and okay and working fine, and whilst I'm here I check if there's any play in the flywheel, any up and down movement, which would indicate that we need to replace the main bearings. This is absolutely fine. And so I now give this all a spray down behind here, and then I let it soak. And whilst that's doing so, I tend to the bar. First of all, is it nice and straight? And I find that out by taking a look down it like this. This does indeed look absolutely fine. And the 2 rails on each side of the bar are the same height, so there's no wear there. And taking a look at this side of the bar, there's a lot of dirt in there which we'll be needing to clean very shortly. And if the bar has a sprocket at the end like this, it's worth moving it to see if it's nice and free and there isn't too much play in the bearings. This one's fine. Looking down into the groove of the bar, and we can see there's a lot of dirt in there that we'll need to remove. And I myself find it easier to use a bar groove cleaning tool. I find it makes a really good job. And for the sake of around £5, and it's not the kind of thing that wears out, you can use it time and time again. If you need to find one of these, I've put a link to it in the description. But you can see as I sweep from the top of the bar where the sprocket is down to the bottom that it's bringing out a lot of that dirt. In fact, you can see what I've just pulled out there. And as with everything else, I'll give the bar a spray, and I make sure I spray plenty into the groove of the bar both sides, even though I've just cleaned it with the bar cleaning tool. And I pay particular attention to the end of the bar with the oiling hole. I like to have a spray on the sprocket on the bar, just to make sure there's no debris there catching it and making sure it turns okay, just giving it a little clean. And so again, after a good spray, I'll let it soak. And in the meantime, I'll take a look at the chain. Considering I've just used it, this chain isn't that dirty, but I'll go through the process anyway. Now, some people soak chains in light oil or petrol fuel. I tend not to do that, particularly if the chain isn't that dirty. And of course, some people would prefer not to have open tubs of gasoline, petrol hanging around. My preference is to give it a spray, as I do with everything else, just to get the loose debris off, and then I let it soak. Another way I've cleaned them in the past is to use an ultrasonic cleaner. This gives them a real good deep clean if there's a lot of tree sap on there, etc. Okay, so this area's been soaking all that time, but I'll just add a little bit to it now, just to make sure it'll be having a good deep clean. And now that debris is all nice and loose, I'll bring in the airline and give it a good blow off. And that's now looking so much better. There's a lot more cleanliness throughout. And you can see that the cleanliness is even across both sides. So on the left hand side where we used the light oil and the right hand side where we used the carb spray, there's hardly any difference there. So now I'll make sure the clutch is okay and the bearings of the clutch are okay. And as with the flywheel on the opposite side, I'll check to see if there's any play on this side, any lift here, just to check if the main bearings are okay. This is fine. And now I've done that, I'll take a look at the back of the carburetor. And really what I want to look at the moment is the linkage okay between the choke lever and the choke itself? So when I move the choke, does the choke butterfly move? This one's fine. And so as I mentioned before, I'll try and make sure little or no debris goes back into the carburetor by activating the choke. But as you can see, there's quite a lot of debris there. And as I potentially don't want to blow any of this debris back into the carburetor through that tiny hole, my preferred method is to use some kitchen cloth on the end of a screwdriver. And I just gently place this in the back there and then try and manipulate the dirt outwards. And you can see how much dirt I've removed with just a few attempts. And afterwards we can physically see that this is much cleaner. And so after soaking in the carburetor spray for the last few minutes, I now blow that off from around the carburetor, and when I do so, off goes with it dirt and debris. And as I've said, I want to be careful not to blow down the inlet hole. But as we can see, as a result of that, things are a lot cleaner back here. So now we'll tend to the flywheel side that we initially sprayed earlier, and I'll just add a little bit more to it to make sure I'm loosening the grime. And then again, using the airline, I'll blow all of this off, making sure I get into all those small areas, doing a real good job. And although it wasn't too dirty back here, it's unmistakably cleaner than it was. And now the recoil. Again, this isn't overly dirty, but I am going to clean it because I want to be thorough. And as usual, I give it a good spray with carburetor spray or light oil. I tend not to try and get too much on the starter cord if I can help it, although I haven't found that this produces any particular damage with the amount that we're using. And because this isn't overly dirty, I'll blow this off straight away with the airline. It doesn't really need to soak. And as you can see, it's taken off the dirt quite well. And next we'll have a look at the air filter, and as you can see this isn't particularly dirty, but I'll give it a spray anyway. Now with this being the plastic type, I can do this. I wouldn't recommend you do this with a paper type. I do know a few people that soak their paper type air filters in soap and water and let them dry on a radiator overnight. But this type I can clean it this way. And personally I tend not to blow from outside in. I much prefer to blow from inside out, so I'm not blowing any debris into the centre of the filter. And if I do blow on the outside, I do it sort of skimming across the top like this, just to remove any loose debris from the surface. And that's a lot cleaner than it was. And so we'll fit this back on and then start to build up the top. And then we'll turn the machine round and reassemble the recoil system. And now we can concentrate on the chain. Even though it's had a light soaking with the spray, I just give it a little bit more at this point. And then again, I give it a good blow off with the airline until it looks nice and dry. And if I've used light oil as the spray for this, then I've given the chain that little bit of lubrication protection. Even though I'm blowing the oil off now, it's also blowing deep into the joints of the chain. And as I've said, some people do soak these in light oil, but if you're going to do that, then of course you've got to put enough light oil into an adequate container in order to submerge the chain. And this of course uses far more light oil. And going back to what I'm trying to achieve here is to clean this chain, and that's why I've soaked it, and that's why I'm blowing it off, because a lot of the debris then becomes loose because I've soaked it, and then I'm blowing that debris off. And that's why I personally have chose this particular method. As I've said, if the chain was really dirty with lots of tree sap, or it was showing some early signs of going rusty, then I would most probably soak the chain in a container. And now we'll come back to the bar, which again we spray soaked earlier, and like all others I'll give it another little spray first before I start blowing it off. And so we'll get right down into the groove again and loosen any debris that's down in there that I didn't manage to get out with the tool. And then we'll follow this up with a good blow off with the airline, making sure we blow well into the groove of the bar and paying particular attention to the oiling holes on each side of the bar. I then like to spray a little light oil on the end sprocket and make sure it's nice and free. And take a look how clean it now is inside the groove of the bar. It's so different to how it was when we first looked at it. Absolutely clear. And now the chainsaw's nice and clean, we can put the clean bar and chain back in situ, whilst we give the inside of the cover another quick blast of spray and follow that up with the airline. There we go, cleaned up really well. And so before we fit this end cover, we'll take a screwdriver and we'll adjust the chain tensioning mechanism just to the right place so it will sit nicely in the designated adjustment hole in the bar. And so now we'll place this on and all back together correctly. If you need to know how to tension a chain correctly, by the way, there should be a link at the top just appearing there to my other video that goes through this. And now, just to finish off, I like to give mine a clean on the outside. And I know of a lot of people that like to use dash dandies and things like that to make it nice and shiny. But before we do that, we need to get rid of some dirt off there. As you can see, if I take this kitchen cloth, there's still quite a lot of dirt on the outside. And the way I take this off is I give it another spray with some light oil. Please remember, I'm only taking the grime off with this light oil. I'm letting it soak so I can rub off the grime. I realise that if I left this oil on, it would attract dust and dirt, but I'm taking the oil off in a moment so nothing will stick to it, and then there's the option of using products that will shine it up. And so after that's soaked just for a moment or two, I'll get a rag and rub the dirtiest points, and then I give it a good blow off with the airline. And so that's how I clean my chainsaw. Remember, what I've done here isn't a full service, so I haven't touched the fuel filter and replaced any fuel or anything like that. I just wanted to clean this machine. And I'm quite happy with the way this looks, so I won't be using any dash dandy or any polishing products at all. If in the meantime you have any starting or running issues with your chainsaw, I do have a free download on my website. If you click on the link below in the description, it will take you straight through to the area of my website where you can download this. The best of it is it's printable, so you can take it into the workshop with you and study it at your own pace next to your machine. Again, it's absolutely free, and I really hope this video and the download has been of some use to you, and if it has, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done already. And can I just ask that you please give me your honest opinion, what you thought of this video, down in the comments section. I'll thank you in advance for your honesty, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.